Afternoon. We'll get going in just a second. Give people time to sign on. Okay, so good afternoon. Vinny, good afternoon. Maria, good afternoon. Good to see you all. We have some of the same topics today because we have some new information and some main stories leading up to Brantford's election. We'll talk about that in a little more detail. To those who may not have known, the League of Women Voters had a debate of sorts, I would say. Ralph, I'll give you an update on the tax collector issue in a second. Had a debate on Monday night between Tom Brockett and Ray Ingraham. Not Ray Ingraham. Tom Brockett and Jamie Cosgrove. You can see it. I posted on my personal page. I can post it on Brantford 7. It's a pretty not a very good day for Brockett. Literally caught in flat out lies. Just there's one point where he talks about we need revitalization in the center of town, and Cosgrove goes, "That's why I secured $2.5 million for a major renovation." And Brockett turns around and basically says, "Yeah, I voted for that when that came to the RTM." And Jamie turns around and goes, "It was a grant, not part of the budget. Didn't go to the RTM." Like Brockett's now making up votes. I don't have words for. I don't know what that is. They've reached a point. The Democratic campaign. They started off going after Tabor, right? Video after video about Tabor. Then we got calls from people in that area who were getting polling questions. And apparently the poll was awful because they suddenly stopped talking about Tabor. Then they go to economic development, and they want the town to have a full-time economic development coordinator. That our neighboring towns all have full-time economic development coordinators. That turns out to be a lie because Guilford and Madison share an economic development coordinator. And by the way, that person is a former head of the Chamber of Commerce. So it's not like it's some massive economic development person. But throughout the debate, Jamie just kept correcting him. It was unfortunate to see. He was doubling down on economic development, and he doubled down on this police matter. Now, if those did not watch Monday or have not seen some of the things posted, on Monday or over the weekend, Tom Brockett and Ray Dunbar sent out a mailer looking for absentee ballot votes. And in that mailer, they put as much false information as you can, like overages on town projects that have no overages. The senior center has a surplus. They claimed a shortage. They claimed an overage on the animal shelter. The animal shelter is just started. It's 3 weeks old. I don't think they know what overages are. Overages are the final approved number versus the finished project number. They're using numbers from years and years past that were used as placeholders in budget. So what happens is, let's suppose 5-6 years ago they decided to say, "Hey, let's think about put some money into the budget for an animal shelter." And 6 or 7 years out, the finance director, now elected official, throws, "All right, we'll put $3 million in there for that." That's not a budget. It's just like you saying, "All right, in 2 years I'm going to buy a car. Let me set aside $20,000 for that." The car could be 15, the car could be 30, but that's just a number you set aside. That's not a budget. An overage is once it's passed, once it's approved, did we go over that number? In Brantford, it's not possible to expend money without approval of the Board of Finance and RTM. So any claim of overage has to go to the RTM and the Board of Finance. So Brockett knows well there's no overage on the senior center. And he knows well you just approved, and he voted for the final number on the animal shelter. So they're just ridiculous lies that are, the thing about lies is if you're going to lie to try to mislead people, don't make them so easily to prove wrong. Be ambiguous with your lie. Oh, they're being flippant with money, or you can't say there's an overage when there's actually a surplus. In that same mailer, they made a claim that during the live shooting incident, and I was on camera for 5 or 6 hours that day, everybody in town remembers it, the gentleman on the second floor of a building shooting near Richland's parking lot near Shelley's Garden Center. The police were in a line of fire all day. They responded to it. The only person who passed away was the perpetrator, and one person was hit non-fatally with a ricochet. Handled brilliantly by the police department. In their mailer, they claimed that the town, most of town was in the dark during that day. They didn't know what was going on. Now, there's a problem with that statement, and that is, while it seems to be going after the first selectman is not the person who manages communication during a live shooting incident. You never want the first selectman, I don't care how good he is, to be managing information going out during a live shooter incident. A day later, maybe. But during that incident, the police manage carefully what information goes out, what information doesn't go out. And so any question of who that's against, I think they meant it to be critical of Cosgrove. What they were doing was being critical of the police department, of our first responders, because that's who handles that. Asking Cosgrove to handle communication in a live shooting incident is like asking your doctor why he's not paving roads. Like, that's not what they do. The first selectman does not handle communications during an emergency response situation that is unplanned. If there's something going on, a major storm, we can plan for that. We sent out regular messages on COVID, things of that nature, what have you. But during a live shooting incident, which they specifically mentioned and specifically said people were in the dark on, that's the police. Whether you meant it or not, you are being critical and attacking the police and the first responders who handle communication during that incident. That's not a question, that's a fact. I can tell you the police and I can tell you the fire the department was pretty pissed. Everyone I've talked to was pretty pissed. Then Cosgrove comes out with the only press release he's posted at all this election saying, listen, I don't know what you're talking about, but we handled that well. Our town handled that well. Our police and fire followed their protocols. Cosgrove was away, but on the phone throughout the whole thing. Although, in fairness, he's not a big person in that situation. In that situation, he's not a player. The police managed that. That said, it was handled perfectly. And by anyone in town who saw that happen, we were here as information came in. I was live. We know it was handled perfectly. To anybody who says anything different, it's just bullshit. Were most people in the dark? No, most people knew exactly what's going on. I know because we had something like 35,000 views on the podcast that day. And they were coming from all over the state, possibly. But still, people knew what was going on. No question. Had a ton of news coverage. But the police were not always giving out a lot of information. And even as I got information in, I wasn't allowed to produce the information because there was still a live shooter incident going on. I was told by officials in the police and fire department, here's what's happening, but don't release it yet. That's a common thing. Happens. So they put out this mailer, intentionally or not, was extremely critical of our first responders. So I'm going to let you listen to the part of the debate in question here. So, oh, by the way, after that happened, Cosgrove put out a press release saying, listen, we support our first responders. They handled that perfectly. Our protocols were in place. We had strong leadership. Our police did their job. Fire did their job. The town side that Cosgrove is responsible for did their job. Children that were at day camps were pulled inside quickly. Parents were notified extremely quickly. And there are many, many parents who posted all over social media on how well it was handled. The town side handled it well, and the police and fire did the thing that they do well, and they did it well. So then you have this interaction in the debate on Monday. I'm just going to let you listen. Starts with Cosgrove.
As far as Mr. Brockett and Selectman Dunbar putting out a letter to voters saying that, the event that took place on Main Street, I think is shameful. I think the fact that a campaign would kind of stoop to that level is shameful. I just want to clear the record. The town of Brantford, our public safety personnel, emergency responders, town staff followed the emergency protocols to a T. And it is through those efforts of many that didn't become a worse tragedy than it could have. So to say and criticize where, the first selectman did nothing, the first selectman didn't get out there and send a text message to everybody. Listen, you know what? In those types of situations, a leader does the protocols that are, everybody is aware of the team. A politician seeks the camera. A politician seeks to have a quote in print, not a leader. So I'm happy to and proud of the way this town responded in a crisis situation.
Okay. Mr. Brockett, do you
Yeah.
have any
Thank you.
other new issue?
Well, can I respond to that issue first?
All right.
Yes, thank you. This was the active shooter situation in April. The correspondence that we put out in our campaign said the following. Most residents were kept in the dark with respect to the active shooter. That is absolutely a factual and true statement. The first selectman did not inform any resident in this town that there was an active shooter. Had he informed them, everybody would have been stayed away and the police would have been able to do their job. Our first responders acted admirably and did a terrific job, and they were acknowledged by Ray and I in an editorial in the Sound immediately following the incident. The first selectman was on vacation, and I don't deny anybody the right to a vacation. However, if you're going to go on vacation, somebody should be left in charge. In my view, every resident in this town should have been informed immediately so they would have stayed away from the area.
Okay. This guy's an asshole. Let's make this clear. The police and first responders handle that day. Mr. Brockett, whether you're ever elected to anything or the first selectman is in place, doesn't matter. He's not the person that handles communication that day. Now, pretending for a second that because the first selectman didn't put out a text message to everybody that they were all running to the scene is just bullshit. It was handled perfectly by the police because that's their job. During an active shooter situation, the first selectman has no role and no right to send out a mass text to anybody. Because if the information is coming from town hall instead of first responders, people get shot. The police decide what goes out and when, not the first selectman. So you could promise that when you're in office, if you're ever in office, God help us if you are, but if you're ever in office, you're going to start putting out releases and in live shooting situations. You're going to send out a text? No, you're not. I assure you, the police will stop you, Mr. Brockett. I know your intention was to be critical of the first selectman, but what it shows is you don't know what the fuck you're doing. You don't know protocols. You don't know what the job of the first selectman is. You don't know that during a live shooter circumstance, you're the back guy. You're not the guy in the front. You're not the guy directing that circumstance. We're not electing somebody to handle that. We hire that position. That position has years of experience handling emergency response. I want Jamie Cosgrove to improve infrastructure, which he does. I want him to build buildings, which he does. I want him to keep the tax rate down, which he does. I don't want him managing emergency situations of live shooters shooting from second-story buildings at our cops. You're an idiot, Mr. Brockett. You're an idiot. You're criticizing the first selectman for something he has nothing to do with, and you're criticizing the outcome that the police managed. No wonder the police are so pissed. Because you keep doubling down on the same false information. You're an idiot. You have no idea what you're talking about, and it gets worse. Because the second name on that mailer was Ray Dunbar, who had a career as a cop. He retired as a captain and retired as part of the emergency response team. Ray Dunbar knows better. He knows Brockett's full of shit. He knows he pissed off every cop because I know people have been telling him. And Brockett then went Monday night, after this weekend, after hearing from all the people in town that are pissed, and doubled down on that idiotic, stupid, dangerous statement. No, Mr. Brockett. The first selectman has no role when it comes to information going to the public regarding an active shooter situation. You would not have made anything safer. The police made it incredibly safe. Police made sure no one went near there and no other lives were lost. They did their job admirably. And you want to criticize that situation, then you're criticizing the police because that's who managed it. You have no idea what you're talking about. And your ideas are dangerous. And that was after being called out in this debate for 3 or 4 lies that made no sense. You know, he talked about coming for even little things like the vote on $2.5 million, which he imagined, which wasn't an RTM vote. He talked about having a committee to do sidewalks, and he went to the selectmen. They didn't do a committee. There can't be a committee to do sidewalks. The planning and zoning handles that. Planning and zoning is a product of state statute. That's who answers it. If planning and zoning wants to create a sidewalk committee, they can do that. But sidewalk committees are very difficult because so many roads are state roads, and people have property rights. So he kept saying things that don't make sense. He kept talking about economic development. And this is what he said. We need economic development to go out and bring business here. That's not how economic development works. Economic development is like planting a garden. What do you do? Here's what Cosgrove has done. Cosgrove's approach, and it's been consistent from day one. Environmental issues. View environmental issues, clean energy, open space, parks, trails, solar farms, all that stuff as part of economic development. That the cleaner town you have, the more attractive it is. The more people want to live here. The more trails you have, the more open space you have in key areas, the more they want to live here. 2, develop key areas around exits in Route 1. Why? Because people don't want to go over the Q Bridge for stuff. So you get the green going, you get the environment going, you get it a better living condition, then you make sure they have resources to buy things and have development here. And so what do we have? We have an increase in high-end apartments happening right now. And that's because of demand. People want to live here. That means there are developers willing to spend millions of dollars to build in Brantford on spec. That means speculative, thinking, hoping that they're going to make their money back. And they know they are because of what Brantford's done to grow their base and to make it attractive to people. People want to be here. We have Amazon coming. Costco's likely coming. Major developments happening. All be added to the tax rolls. At the same time, Cosgrove has also spent a lot of money on infrastructure. Senior centers, Walsh Intermediate School, another firehouse in Indian Neck, an animal shelter, the Blackstone Library. This is what economic development is. It's led by the first selectman. I will tell you, we had a full-time economic development coordinator, and it didn't mean shit. Guilford and Madison split one. She doesn't really do much. If the first selectman doesn't understand economic development, ain't no economic development coordinator going to help. The one we had, Terry Ellen, was fighting Costco, was trying to stop Costco from coming to town. That's your full-time economic development coordinator. Instead, we now have a part-time one who also happens to be the chair of the Economic Development Commission. He understands economic development. He's trying to get those things here. And then we have the second one being a compliance person who helps environmental issues and a bunch of other issues that many in town want. If you don't understand economic development and your answer is to hire somebody that you think does, you're a failure. If you talk about economic development and then have no plan for it. Cosgrove's plan, environment, keep the town clean, keep open space, keep parks. It's not brain surgery. 2, invest in infrastructure, senior centers, Walsh Intermediate School, firehouse, Blackstone Library, project, by the way, I can't stand, but the Blackstone Library, and an animal shelter. 3, develop key areas, exit ramps, Route 1. That's an economic development plan because you make the town open and ready for people to come in. And when they come in and they want to talk to somebody, they want to talk to either planning and zoning or the first selectman. They don't want to talk to an economic development coordinator who has no power to do anything. You don't know what you're talking about, Mr. Brockett. You have no idea what you're talking about. This debate was a disaster. Go watch it. It's embarrassing. Over and over, he said things that made no sense. And if you're going to go back and keep saying on that day, there are people that were uninformed or kept in the dark, you are attacking the police department because they managed it. And you can say what a great job the police did, but you can't say that while attacking him in the same breath. Because the first selectman will never and should never be managing communications on a day we have a live shooter incident taking place. I know Jamie. I can tell you this. The last person I actually want to hear from on that day is the first selectman. I want to hear from the police. I want to hear from fire. I want to hear from the state police. Maybe even Public Works who are shutting down roads. That's it. Mr. Brockett, you simply don't know what you're talking about. And you can say I'm biased. Yes, I've already endorsed Jamie. Yes, I know the job he's done. I see what's happened the last 8 years, the spectacular level of infrastructure that's happened. We have math for that. And they've been under budget. Almost every project. The only project that went over, I think, was the Blackstone Library project, which is oddly enough not a town department. They came back because the roof was not included in the original project or something along those lines. But $4 million on the senior center, you don't know what you're talking about. So you don't know construction, you don't know infrastructure, you have no idea of police protocols, despite your running mate being a former police captain. What do you know? Before you put the town in danger, what do you know, Mr. Brockett? What do you understand? I've yet to see anything that you understand. I've yet to see a platform that makes sense. I've seen you lie. I've seen you bullshit. I've seen you send out false mailers and make up numbers. You even made up a vote in a debate. I've yet to see you actually be good at anything except lying. I want to separate this next topic because while Roberta Gill Brooks is on the same ticket, I've always had a special place in my heart, I should say in hell, for people that actively mislead others. That's Brockett. That's not Roberta Gill. Roberta Gill Brooks has been a tax collector for 4 years. I have nothing negative to say about her as a person. My interactions with her have all been positive. I think she gave a very good speech at the Black Lives Matter rally. I didn't see her she's done some other BLM related things. I did not see them. But I think she's a fine person. And her father was a former police chief who was an admirable person by every account. There are some times where people just don't belong in certain jobs. I did not know this document existed. So I had, when this research started, when I first started seeing the audit that came out last month, based on the OPM, Office of Policy and Management, the audit of a town, that showed us that the town's in very good shape. They found two things. One was a small minor issue on the Board of Ed, like some filing they didn't do within 90 days, not a big deal. The second one was the tax collector, which was a serious, and they found it in the report to be a serious issue, that she had changed dates on payments to help people avoid interest payments. And that instead of paying interest, she was taking current payments and putting them towards the current year. Usually people want to try to get a register a car. They don't want to pay back taxes or something along those lines. Don't have all the details yet. And in fact, that is part of the problem. I don't have all the details. We do know, I've heard many, many complaints from the department, from employees in the department, and employees in town hall who say it's kind of a mess. She may just not belong there. And that's fine. Not everybody is set out for everything. You know, I worked at Taco Bell, my first job when I was 15 or 16, and that didn't last very long. So, you know, sometimes it's just not a good fit. This may not be a good fit for her. That said, the document I got as a result of a Freedom of Information request today was shocking to me, not that it was sent, but when it was sent. So the Office of Policy and Management sent, and this article is written on Branford 7, sent a letter to Roberta Gill Brooks, May 7th. And I'm going to open this up. And let's see, audit report. Hold on. No, I think I'm going to order over them. Oh, Brentford Tax Collector letter. And the letter said, and I'll read this. It says, Dear Miss Gill Brooks, May 7th, by the way. So we're talking 5-6 months ago, before the election really got started. The Office of Policy Management has been informed of potential improper receipt and recording of a tax payment. Now, this says singular, a tax payment. That's important because this is May 7th. We don't know if there's more. We don't know if the audit found more, and we'll talk about an ongoing investigation. Specifically, that a check was backdated interest not collected, and the attached envelope had its return address removed. It was initialed as being recorded previously by a staff member. That's a big deal. Because not only was it backdated to avoid interest, but then you try to cover it up. You're trying to alter the envelope that it came in to try to cover up the fact that you backdated it, which means you knew this was wrong. This wasn't, oh yeah, we'll do you a favor. This like you knew this was wrong. I didn't see, that wasn't part of the audit. This is part of the OPM State of Connecticut letter to Roberta Gill Brooks on May 7th. If OPM is made aware of other concerns on proper policy and procedures pursuant to Connecticut general statutes, we will work with the municipality on conducting a review audit. Well, they did. There's been a review audit. We have it. And that audit confirmed that serious issues are taking place in the tax office. Please note that if any improper action are found to be accurate, misconduct proceedings and fines may be taken against you as tax collector under Connecticut General Statutes 12154 and 12170. There's a variety of there are some things, they put a bunch of laws here. First of all, that CGS 12124 provides that only selectmen, mayor, aldermen, or warden, burgesses, or boroughs may abate taxes or interest on taxes that are poor or unable to pay. Such abatement must be approved by a standing municipal abatement committee or the secretary of the OPM. So the tax collector has no authority to waive taxes. They just collect taxes. The tax collector has no authority to say, nah, it's okay, it's only a day late. It's okay, we'll apply to this year so you can register your car and don't worry about last year's. They have no authority to do that. And when they do that, they're costing money. What we don't know is, how often did this happen? Who did this happen to? The person clearly knew what was happening was wrong if they were changing dates on envelopes, but was it for supporters? Was it for just random people? Was it to cover up the fact that you didn't do some other job, like sending out bills on time? That we have people within the department willing to come forward to OPM and willing to come forward to the auditor and let them know this tells you we have a problem in the department. I don't want to see criminal charges here. I'd like to think she was doing some things out of the goodness of her heart. I have to question that when I've heard some of the accounts coming from this department. That said, she should not be the tax collector. And if she got this letter on May 7th, did her party not know? Was there a discussion in the Democratic Party on should they find someone else? Ralph, I believe the taxpayer it's a large crane company. I forgot the exact name of it. And what they do, so the taxpayer that owes over $1 million was put in that Patch article, but it's unfortunate because that's likely not the fault of Roberta. Now, I don't know this for sure, but that's likely the person doing what they can to skirt the back taxes. So what a large corporation could do, if you owe $1 million in taxes, it costs you $1,000 to go to the state and file a new LLC if you want to register your vehicles, right? So you just change everything into a new company, register that LLC to circumvent those taxes. She may have to, at that point, abide by that. That may be a loophole that has to be changed on a larger level. So I'm not going to put that on her, that somebody owes $1 million in back taxes, until we know more. And so at the Board of Finance meeting last Monday, I believe, Joe Mooney, a Democrat, former head of the state tax collection agency, decided to do basically a task force between him, the finance director, and the town attorney to review the department. And I can tell you that it's known that there's some serious issues in that department. If I had my way, I'd like to not go further, not press charges, not make it criminal, and just, well, why don't you retire? Why don't you find another job? But she's not decided to do that. And so with OPM saying there's some serious issues, with an auditor saying there's some serious issues, with the chair of the Board of Finance, knowing there's serious issues, and 5-0 was the vote. All 3 Democrats voted to open basically an investigation into what's happening in this department. There's a problem. And I can tell you this was not happening when Joanne Cleary was in office, also a Democrat, the longtime tax collector. It is not something that has been there then. This is something new with Roberta. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. Ralph, okay, I'm not exactly sure, but that's not the way the article was written. I have read the report. So that comes up as an issue. What we don't know is, what I don't know the answer to is the issue of somebody skirting $1 million on the tax collector, or if they've legally started a second LLC, if they legally started some other entity to register their vehicles, because that's how the tax collectors guarantee you pay, right? So you're going to have to register your car every couple of years. You can't register it unless your taxes are paid. So that's their, big stick. Can you, if I have a personal car and decide I'm going to put the car in my business name, can I still register? I don't know the answer to that. Joe Mooney will have to get to the bottom of that. Joe Finch will have to get to the bottom of that. The sad part about this is that over the last 3-4 years, Jamie has pushed to give this woman as much help as humanly possible. We asked Joanne Cleary to come back for a short amount of time. We asked a separate consultant to come back. We added staff, and now we've added full-time staff as late as this year for these issues. She told the Board of Finance she still has not passed the test she needs to pass for certification. It just might not be her position. It may just not be the place she should be. And wait a minute, wait, hold on. I got to read this comment. When I brought this up to Tom Brockett, he informed me that it was Mr. Cosgrove's fault for not sharing information. Wait, what? So Tom Brockett said it's Jamie Cosgrove's fault that the tax collector has serious issues in their department? And she got a letter from OPM May 7th and they still had her on her ticket? I'm sorry, Brockett's an ass. It's hard to put into words. He's just an ass. This is not somebody qualified to run for office. And I'm going to tell you something else. Kevin Coughlin's the kid running this campaign. Kevin Coughlin moved to Branford 2 years ago. He's the communications director for the Senate Democrats. If you want to know the difference between the Democratic Party and Republican Party in Branford, as a former Democratic Town Committee member who left, years ago when Anthony Giardello was on the RTM and you had Victor Casella as the chair, and even Frank Carano, you had reasonable people at the head of the Democratic Party. And the big difference was you went to an RTM meeting and they would fight about stuff. And afterwards, they all went to Donovan's, both parties. Like, they were legitimately friends. There was mutual respect for everybody. They enjoyed each other's company. They understood the roles they played. They fought, but it wasn't personal. It was the same town. The Republicans are still that way. The Ray Ingrahams and the members on that, they're all those that way. Hey, Eddie Preetz, and that's what they are. This is our town. We're going to the football game on Friday night. We're going to go to the RTM. We're going to fight it out. Then we're going to get a drink. That's what small town politics was supposed to be. Once Anthony Giardello left, it became a different place. The Democrats on the RTM just became nasty. That's when I left. I said, I want to be a part of this. And they don't go out anymore. They don't talk anymore. And some of them on occasion privately talk, but it's just nasty. And sometimes you see, I've seen it. Jamie Cosgrove walked by a Democrat and he says, hey, how are you? They won't even look at him, some of these key players. It's a different, what is wrong with you people? And then Kevin Coughlin comes in who only cares about politics. He's been here for 2 years. He's a professional political operative, works for the Senate Democrats, handles communication. And you just get nasty shit. This isn't small town politics. It's big city politics you're bringing into Branford. And if you're looking for a difference between the two parties, this morning or yesterday, some signs were found in Short Beach from both political parties that had red paint on them and writing on them and graffiti on them. Okay. The Democrats put together a press release. And it's a press release from Kevin Coughlin and from the tax collector candidate and the town clerk candidate. And they're, oh, this is awful. This is terrible. We need to improve civility in our country. What they didn't say was it happened to both parties. The Republicans didn't put out a press release. They took the signs down, replaced them with better signs, and call it a day. And in the coverage, the Patch writes the press release from the Democratic Party, right? They don't call the Republicans. They don't do anything. They're just propaganda. But the Register, I give them credit. Hearst, which is the New Haven Register, gets a press release from the Democrats, sees it, then calls Ray Ingraham, the head of the Republican side, says, what's the story here? And Ray gives, so in the articles, there's this quote from Kevin Coughlin. I don't think it's political. And there's quotes from the other people. And Ray Ingraham gives this quote. And it's just, Democrats they put out a press release. They're condemning this. This is awful. We need to get civil back in our debates. Here's Ray Ingraham. It wasn't a targeted thing on anyone's signs. Ingraham said, we get kids doing this every year. That's the difference between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party in Brantford. One is trying to start shit. One is trying to make it as political as humanly possible. They have no problem lying. Brockett had no problem just slandering the police department. You can't say, police did a great job. We stand up for the police, but people were in the dark. The police handled that. The police handled the communication that day. You can praise them because you think it's going to get you votes and then attack as if it's going after Cosgrove. The police did that. This is the state of the Brantford Democratic Party. I'm a Democrat and a former DTC member. This is wrong. We need a rise of the Democrats. That's the next Star Wars movie. The rise of the moderate Democrats. We need that again. Because it's just nasty. And this kid running the campaign is just nasty. We heard about his behavior at a debate the other night where he refused to leave and got in a fight with one of the organizers of the debate. He's just a nasty kid. No one wants this running a small town party. Small town politics is about go to the meeting, fight it out, go afterwards, shake hands, have a beer, enjoy your neighbors, for Christ's sake. Not about not talking to each other or slandering somebody else or lying about somebody else. You know, even when there were races in back when Casella was the chair and Anthony Giardello was on the RTM on the Democratic side, I remember watching John Opie, a Republican, and Unkta Ross, a Democrat, showing up to their debate in the same car. They drove together from Stony Creek. Since then, the Democratic Party has fallen apart. And it's sad to see. Because we're all better if we have people who genuinely care and not just seeking office, just seeking something to do in retirement, or just seeking to demonize any party that's not theirs. I applaud those Democrats who wrote letters praising Jamie Cosgrove because he's done an amazing job for things that Democrats are supposed to care about. Social services, the environment. Brantford's a leader in some of these areas. Climate change, we initiated in the state, the first one in the state to have a coastal resiliency fund. The first one required new legislation to do it. Brantford did it. How many towns around us have solar farms? We did it years ago. We're setting the standard on things where Democrats want. Yet the Democratic Party in Brantford is just messed up. It needs to be fixed. But it's not going to be fixed by getting them in office. Brockett's behavior was awful. Roberta probably doesn't belong in the office in the seat she has, and this needs to change. Okay, that's it for now. We do have one more BOE candidate. I haven't scheduled that yet. We're figuring that out. If he comes on, great. If not, we'll just have a podcast tomorrow at 4:00. Guys, thanks for joining. I know I went a little bit over. I kind of ranted a little bit longer, but it's just getting crazy. I know it's 3 weeks to go to Election Day, or a little bit less than that. And so it's lying season. You know, whoever feels they're behind is going to just make up stuff and yell and scream and double down on false statements. But criticizing that day of a live shooting, you're criticizing the cops. You're criticizing the people who were taking bullets. Shame on you. Guys, have a great night. I'll do the best I can to be on tomorrow at 4:00.